There is one piece in the British Royal Collection that, in late 2017, was quietly requested by a senior royal woman for a wedding scheduled the following spring. The request went to the late reigning Queen, who was the only person in the household with the authority to approve it. The piece was a tiara. The wedding was Prince Harry's wedding to Meghan Markle, held at St George's Chapel in Windsor on May 19, 2018. The late reigning Queen refused. I want to be careful with what I say next, because the refusal of a royal jewellery loan is the kind of incident that royal correspondents tend to dramatise beyond what the documented record actually supports. But the refusal happened. The bride did not wear the tiara she had originally chosen. She wore a different tiara, also from the British Royal Collection, also loaned by the late reigning Queen, but a different piece, with different provenance, different visual character, and different significance. The story of that refusal, and what it means for what tiaras are now considered loanable to which royal women, is one of the most documented refused jewellery incidents in modern royal history. And the consequences of that refusal, 7 years on, still shape the working list of tiaras available to senior royal women today. My name is Geoffrey Whitcombe. I have been a curator of royal jewellery for 30 years. Today I want to walk you through what we actually know about the 2018 refusal, what we don't know, and what the curatorial reading suggests was really going on. Honestly, I don't know if I will get the interpretation right. The records I am drawing on are partial. The published accounts conflict. The household never confirms refusals. They simply do not happen in the institution's preferred narrative until the record makes confirmation unavoidable. So everything I am about to tell you is built from press accounts of November and December 2018, the small amount of household correspondence that has surfaced through subsequent biographies, and the reading I would give as a curator who has watched royal jewellery loan decisions from the institutional side for 3 decades. Let me start with the piece itself. The tiara at the centre of the refusal is the Vladimir Tiara, also known as the Grand Duchess Vladimir Tiara. The piece has one of the most complicated provenances in the entire British Royal Collection, and to understand why the refusal happened, you have to understand where the tiara came from. The Vladimir Tiara was made in 1874 by the Bolin workshop in St. Petersburg for the Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna of Russia, the wife of Grand Duke Vladimir Alexandrovich, brother of Tsar Alexander III. It was a wedding present. The original design was a band of 15 interlocked diamond circles, each holding a swinging pearl drop. The piece was substantial, a full kokoshnik-style headdress, designed in the Russian imperial tradition rather than the lighter European tiara tradition that the British Royal Collection generally favours. The Grand Duchess wore it through the 1880s and 1890s as a senior figure in the Russian imperial court. She was, in her time, considered the most jewelled woman in Romanov circles, wealthier in personal jewellery than the Empress, and with a vault at the Vladimir Palace in St. Petersburg that contained, by some counts, over 300 individual pieces. Then came 1917. The Russian Revolution removed the Romanov dynasty in February 1917. The Vladimir Palace was searched and sealed. The Grand Duchess herself fled to a private estate near Kislovodsk in the Caucasus, then onward through wartime Europe, eventually reaching Switzerland in early 1920. The Vladimir Tiara, along with the rest of her major personal jewellery, did not travel with her. The pieces were too valuable to move openly through the chaos of revolutionary Russia, and the Grand Duchess made the decision, apparently in late 1917 or early 1918, to leave the jewellery hidden in the Vladimir Palace in a sealed vault until conditions allowed retrieval. The retrieval is one of the most dramatic episodes in royal jewellery provenance history. In 1919, 2 British intelligence operatives, Albert Stopford and a colleague whose name has been variously identified, entered Russia undercover, located the sealed vault at the Vladimir Palace, removed the major jewellery pieces and smuggled them out of the country in suitcases. The Vladimir Tiara was among the recovered pieces. It reached the Grand Duchess in Switzerland in 1919. Picture this: the Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna in her Swiss apartment in late 1919, opening a suitcase she has not seen since 1917. Inside is the tiara her husband gave her in 1874, the piece she wore through 40 years of imperial court life, now retrieved from a country that no longer exists in the form she knew it. She lived for less than a year after the retrieval. The Grand Duchess died in September 1920. The tiara passed to her daughter, Princess Elena, who needed money, like most exiled Russian royal women in the early 1920s. In 1921, Princess Elena sold the Vladimir Tiara to Queen Mary of Britain. Queen Mary was a deliberate collector. The acquisition was not an emotional purchase. It was an institutional decision made through Garrard, with Queen Mary's clear awareness that she was acquiring a piece of imperial Russian provenance that had been smuggled out of revolutionary Russia under exceptional circumstances. The price was not insignificant. The records suggest something in the range of £28,000 in 1921 currency, equivalent to over £1 million in current value, a substantial sum even by Queen Mary's standards. The piece entered the British Royal Collection. Queen Mary made one significant modification. She had Garrard add a system of detachable pearl and emerald drops, allowing the tiara to be worn in 3 different configurations, with the original pearls, with emeralds, or with no drops at all. The flexibility was deliberate. The piece was a working tiara, intended to be wearable in multiple settings. Queen Mary wore it occasionally through the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s. The late reigning Queen wore it with unusual frequency through the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s, at state banquets, at diplomatic receptions, at major dynastic events. In photographs from that period, the Vladimir Tiara is one of the late reigning Queen's most worn pieces, second only to the Cambridge Lover's Knot among the larger tiaras. I confess, when I look at photographs of the late reigning Queen wearing the Vladimir Tiara at, say, a 1970s state banquet, I find the piece more interesting than its surface suggests. There is something about the way the diamond circles catch light at the front and the way the pearls or emeralds swing slightly with movement that signals provenance. The piece does not look British. It looks Russian. Kokoshnik in proportion, imperial in scale, slightly too rich for the comparatively understated British tiara tradition. To wear it is to wear a piece of Romanov memory, even if the wearer is a British monarch. That brings us to 2017. In late 2017, according to several biographical accounts published in 2019 and 2020, the new Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, then engaged to Prince Harry, requested a specific tiara from the royal collection for her May 2018 wedding. The published accounts differ on which piece she requested. The most consistent version, repeated in 3 independent biographies and broadly confirmed in royal correspondent reporting, is that the original request was for the Vladimir Tiara. The request, as is standard procedure for royal collection loans, went to the late reigning Queen for approval. The crown jeweler would have been consulted, the household would have reviewed the political symbolism, and the late reigning Queen, after consideration, declined the request. The reason given, and here we are in interpretive territory because the household does not publish its reasoning, was apparently provenance-related. The Vladimir Tiara has a Russian imperial origin that, while culturally remarkable, is also politically sensitive. To loan it to a senior royal bride at a globally televised wedding is to make a particular kind of statement about Russian imperial heritage and British royal continuity that the late reigning Queen, in 2018, did not wish to make. There were also, by some accounts, concerns about the safety of the piece. The Vladimir Tiara is one of the more valuable individual items in the working royal collection, and the security considerations of loaning it to an event with hundreds of millions of global viewers were not trivial. A different tiara was offered instead. The piece the bride eventually wore on May 19, 2018, was Queen Mary's diamond bandeau tiara, a 1932 piece by Garrard, much lighter, much smaller, much less politically charged. The bandeau is a band-style headpiece, set with a central detachable brooch of approximately 10 brilliant-cut diamonds. It was a wedding gift from a queen consort to a granddaughter. A comparatively private piece, with no Russian connection, no smuggled from revolutionary vault history, no kokoshnik silhouette. It is a fine tiara, but it is a different category of tiara from the Vladimir. The substitution was managed without public confirmation of refusal. The household released photographs of the bride wearing the bandeau and described it as a generous loan from Her Majesty the Queen. There was no mention of the original request. There was no acknowledgement of refusal. The story of the refusal only emerged later, through biographies, through royal correspondent leaks, through the slow accumulation of detail that surrounds any contested royal jewelry decision. Earlier this week, I walked you through what royal coverage gets wrong about the imperial state crown, the piece that no consort wears, no senior royal woman inherits, that stays with the monarch alone. The Vladimir Tiara is, in some ways, a counterpart story. The imperial state crown is the piece that institutional protocol holds back from consorts. The Vladimir Tiara is a piece that institutional protocol can also hold back, but for entirely different reasons. The imperial crown stays with the monarch by structural rule. The Vladimir, in 2018, was held back from a specific royal woman by selective decision. Those are very different kinds of holding back, and the difference matters. I'd argue, and this is a curator's reading, not a fact, that what happened in 2018 was less a refusal of a person and more a refusal of a moment. The Vladimir Tiara would, almost certainly, have been loanable to the same bride at a different event, in different circumstances, at a different point in the household's relationship with the new Duchess. To loan a piece of contested Russian imperial provenance at the bride's wedding day, the moment of maximum public visibility, the moment of dynastic insertion into the British royal family, was a particular kind of risk that the household preferred not to take. The decision was institutional, not personal. But the story has been read since then as personal. That reading has shaped subsequent decisions, and that is where the consequences of the 2018 refusal become genuinely interesting from a curatorial perspective. What is less widely understood about the 2018 refusal is that it altered the working list of tiaras now considered loanable to senior royal women. Before 2018, the unwritten convention had been that any senior royal bride could request, in consultation with the household, any piece in the working royal collection. The crown jeweler would advise, the household would review, and most requests would be approved with minor modifications. After 2018, the working list became more restrictive. Tiaras with politically sensitive provenance, Russian imperial pieces, certain pieces with colonial-era origins, pieces whose acquisition history involves smuggling, expropriation, or contested ownership, became less freely loanable. The Vladimir Tiara, in particular, has been worn far less frequently in the public record since 2018. The late reigning queen wore it once or twice in the years before her death. King Charles III, since his accession, has not authorized any loan of the Vladimir Tiara that has appeared in public. The piece, in other words, has become quieter. Honestly, I don't know if this is permanent. The household's working list is constantly being revised, and a piece that goes quiet for 5 years can become loanable again under different circumstances. But the 2018 refusal set a precedent. The precedent is that pieces with politically sensitive provenance can be held back from specific events, even when requested by senior royal women, when the household decides the moment is wrong. I want to be careful here. The 2018 refusal is sometimes read in the popular press as evidence of personal hostility from the late reigning queen toward the new Duchess of Sussex. I do not think the curatorial record supports that reading. The late reigning queen approved the loan of the diamond bandeau the same day she declined the Vladimir. The bandeau is not a token piece, it is a fine 1932 Garrard tiara, with substantial diamonds, with significant provenance, and with the kind of intimate family gift origin that is, in some ways, a more personal loan than the Vladimir would have been. To read the substitution as a slight is, I would argue, to misread the institutional logic. What I would read it as is this: the household, in 2017 and 2018, was navigating a particularly delicate dynastic moment. The new Duchess of Sussex was American, had been a working actress, had no aristocratic background, and was joining the institution at a moment of increasing media scrutiny of royal symbolism. The household preferred, for that wedding, a tiara whose meaning was British, intimate, and uncontroversial. The bandeau served that purpose. The Vladimir would not have. The substitution was, in institutional terms, the conservative choice. I'd argue, though, and I want to be clear this is interpretation, not fact, that the conservative choice in 2018 has had consequences that go beyond the immediate event. The Sussexes' eventual departure from working royal life in 2020, the well-documented strain in the relationship between the Sussex household and the Cambridges, and the broader media narrative around the institution's handling of Meghan Markle as a royal woman, all of this has, in the public reading, become entangled with the 2018 Tiara story. The refusal of a piece is now read by a substantial portion of the British and international public as the early signal of a broader pattern of institutional resistance. I do not think that reading is correct, but I understand why it has taken hold. The household's preference for institutional discretion over public explanation means that in cases where the public has pre-filled the explanation gap with a more dramatic narrative, the institution has limited capacity to correct the record. The 2018 refusal, in the absence of household acknowledgement, became whatever the public chose to believe it was. What I find most striking, looking at the 2018 episode now, 7 years on, is what it tells you about how the British Royal Collection works in moments of institutional pressure. The collection is not, as many royal documentaries suggest, a vault of fixed and freely loanable pieces. It is a working portfolio, constantly being assessed against the political, dynastic and symbolic context of each individual loan request. The Crown Jeweller and the household maintain a real-time working list of which tiaras are appropriate for which events, which are appropriate for which wearers, and which are appropriate at which moments. The list is not static. The 2018 refusal moved the Vladimir Tiara from the loanable column to the held-back column, and the piece has remained in the held-back column for the 7 years since. I would not be surprised if the Vladimir Tiara becomes loanable again under different circumstances. I would also not be surprised if it does not. The piece is, in its own way, paying for the visibility of its provenance. Picture this: a future state banquet at Buckingham Palace sometime in the 2030s. The guest of honor is a head of state from a country whose history is intertwined with Russian imperial history. The host is a queen consort, perhaps the Princess of Wales, after she becomes queen consort, perhaps a different woman by then, who has access to the working royal collection. The Crown Jeweller advises that the Vladimir Tiara, after a long period of public absence, would be a meaningful diplomatic statement for that specific evening. The household reviews the political symbolism. The decision is made to bring the piece back into public wear. That is speculation. But it is the kind of speculation that the working logic of the British Royal Collection invites. Pieces go quiet. Pieces come back. The 2018 refusal was, in the longer view, an institutional pause, not an institutional verdict. I have been a curator long enough to recognize the difference between a piece being retired and a piece being paused. The Vladimir Tiara is, in my reading, paused. Whether it returns under the current monarch or under the next one is a question the household will decide based on circumstances none of us can yet anticipate. What is also worth saying is that the bride at the center of the 2018 refusal, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, has in the years since worn fewer royal collection pieces than any senior royal woman of her generation. She and her husband departed working royal life in early 2020, and the loan portfolio that would normally have accumulated around a Duchess of Sussex over a working career has not accumulated. Whether that is a consequence of the 2018 refusal or a consequence of the broader institutional separation is impossible to disentangle. The two stories are now bound together in a way that makes clean analysis difficult. What I can say as a curator is that the 2018 refusal was a recognizable instance of the institution exercising its discretion over the working royal collection. It was not an aberration. Refusals happen. They happen quietly, they happen without public acknowledgement, and they happen more often than the public realizes. The 2018 case is unusual, not because it occurred, but because it became public. Most refusals of royal collection loan requests over the decades never reach the press. The Vladimir Tiara is currently, by all available accounts, in the working royal vault. It is maintained by the Crown jeweller, checked annually, kept in display-ready condition, and held in reserve for whatever future loan decision the household chooses to make. The piece is not retired, it is held. Tell me what you think. Was the 2018 refusal a reasonable institutional decision in a delicate dynastic moment? Or do you read it as evidence of something more personal? Did the substitution of the diamond bandeau resolve the question, or compound it? And do you expect the Vladimir Tiara to return to public wear under King Charles III, or do you expect it to stay quiet until a different reign? I read every comment. Tell me what you think. But before I go, there is another tiara in the British royal collection whose provenance is more dramatic, more contested, and more historically charged than the Vladimir. It is a piece that was acquired in the 1930s by a senior royal woman who was, at the time, controversial in her own right. The piece was recut, reset, and substantially altered to suit her preferences. The original form was lost. What is left, in the royal collection today, is a 1930s reworking of a much older Cambridge family piece, and the woman who commissioned the reworking is one of the most divisive figures in 20th century British royal history. Her name was Wallis Simpson, and what she did to the Cambridge emeralds is the next thing I want to tell you. That is for next time. Until then, Geoffrey.